I'm going to try and keep my remarks brief so as to leave as much time for questions and discussions and on and on. As far as the forum goes, I'm just going to give you some basic facts and an idea, an understanding of where the effort stands as we speak. So we're proposing two types of mobilizations for the forum. The one level mobilization is for the opening march. The opening march is slated for August 21st, 3 p.m., Victoria Island, and it will go from Victoria Island to Parliament Hill. So that's one level of mobilization. And so far we're working hopefully on bringing 8,000 to 10,000 people to that mobilization. The numbers are the following. We're expecting anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people coming from Quebec. The Quebec Federation of Labour is mobilizing massively throughout Quebec and sending 40 buses. The CSN is participating as well, and they're opening the buses to community activists, etc. So we're expecting anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people to come from Quebec. I've spoken with CUPW. As you know, they'll be launching their campaign against the post office and especially the end of home delivery beginning September. So the forum is a natural launch pad for CUPW, for CUPW. So they will try and mobilize around 1,000 other members to participate in the opening march. PSAC, as you know, federal employees are under the gun. There's many takeaways, bargaining rights as well. The call has been put out, and the Ottawa Gatineau region is hoping to mobilize anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people for the opening march. Let's hope. And then there's a mobilization from across Ontario. There's a special committee which has been set up at the level of the OFL, Ontario Federation of Labour, which has activists from the various labour councils and activists from some of the affiliates, and they're looking at a program of mobilization around Ontario. We hope, I don't have the targets yet, we hope they'll be able to bring anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500. So if all that works well, we should have that 10,000 mobilization, but of course, the key aspect is always local mobilization. So anything you can do in your unions, in your groups, to get the word out, to mobilize massively for that event, it will be extremely useful and extremely necessary. So obviously the idea is to launch the People's Forum with a show of strength of the social movement and the willingness of the social movements to unite against the right. The lineup will be very simple. We're meeting around Victoria Island. Leading the contingents will be the First Nation activists coming out from Victoria Island. Quebec and Ontario contingents will line up behind them. And other groups coming from the west, other parts of the country will be welcome as well. So that's the first type of mobilization. The second type is for participating in the conferences, in the forum itself, which is slated to last 4 days, right? Opens on Thursday, August 21st at 9 o'clock in the morning and ends on Sunday. Very quickly, just to give you an idea in case you haven't followed, the first 2 days, Thursday and Friday, August 21st and 22nd, are dedicated to self-organized workshops, of which there's already 180 which have been proposed. Self-organized workshops are workshops organized by the various individuals or organizations participating in the forum. I'll go through the workshops with you in a minute, but there's already 180 that have been proposed. We expect to have probably another 50 to 100 workshops. We should be able to get 300 workshops, if not more, self-organized workshops. They range on all kinds of topics: indigenous solidarity, pipelines, labor renewal, education, students, etc., etc., etc. LGBT questions, it's extremely wide. If you go on the website of the forum and you click on that particular link, it will give you a lineup of all the workshops which have been proposed. There's some notable people that will be participating in those workshops. For example, I got it confirmed, in fact, on Friday. It's on the website today. Jerry Dias, the president of Unifor, will hold what they call a forum on the Good Jobs campaign on Friday, 4:30. The president of the CSN, Jacqueline Trudeau, will be participating in a workshop on media and the attack on media in Canada in general. Obviously, part of it will be CBC, but also the monopolization of media and what is happening with media in this country. And there will be more and more people that will be announcing their presence at the forum as we continue. The mobilization for the forum is a little slow, unfortunately. So far, we have about 700 people that have registered in the forum. We hope to get up to about 5,000 people registered in the forum. 5,000, yes.
So officially.
Yeah, officially registered, pre-registered. Now, traditionally people register early. It's about the last thing you want to do. Say, 2 days before you go, you get on the website and you do it. The advantage of registering early is obviously registration costs are very low. $15 for unemployed youth and low income, $25 for regular people. They're very low, but they allow us to get a certain amount of money to be able to make sure that the budget does not hit a deficit. So being able to get a certain amount of money early, and also being able to plan and have an idea of the number of people that will be at the venues is worth its weight in gold when we're organizing this kind of event. So we hope to have about 5,000 people registered at the event. Now, we don't expect that there will be 5,000 people at the same time on campus because it's being held at the University of Ottawa. We think that daily participation will vary depending on the day, anywhere from 1,000 to maybe 2,000, roughly. That's what we think. We expect attendance to be higher on Saturday. Only normal people do not work. Probably a little bit lower on Thursday, which is the first day. Higher on Friday. The first indication that we're getting is a lot of union activists coming in with their organizations on Friday, because it's less expensive, obviously, to have people there for Friday night and the weekend than if you bring in Thursday. So those are some of the indications that we have. And we think that the wider public might be there more on Saturday, just to give you a bit of flavor. The last 2 days will be dedicated to what we call convergence assemblies. Convergence assemblies are something which has been developed by the social forum process over the past 6 or 7 years, which is an attempt to bring social movements to work together. Self-organized workshops is where everybody expresses their own interest, be it sectional, whatever, it doesn't matter. You express your interest, the issue that you're working on. Convergence assemblies where you try and bring people together to work on a common agenda, common campaigns, or common strategy. So just to give you an idea of some of the convergence assemblies which are being planned, there's what we call the partial convergence assemblies and the full thematic convergence assembly. The forum has given itself 17 themes on which it's working. And the thematic assemblies will be convergence assemblies on the big themes. For example, there's going to be a convergence assembly on public services, and already the public sector unions, PSAC, CAPW, QP, NUPG, some of the public sector unions from Quebec are beginning to work on what this convergence assembly would look like and what could public sector workers put forward as a strategy to fight austerity, and what are the kind of allies that they have to work with, students, community, etc., etc. So one convergence assembly on one of the big themes of the forum, public sector, will be held in. There's a convergence assembly being planned on climate. Already there was a meeting in Quebec about 2 weeks ago of about 60 or 70 activists from around the country to begin planning this question. So it's pipelines, tar sands, climate change, mobilization, etc. Dylan has been working very hard on organizing a convergence assembly on
democracy.
On democracy and governance. For obvious reasons, right? We don't have to explain why. You understand why, and Dylan, I'm sure, will be able to give you some ideas. I know that some of the private sector unions would like to have a convergence assembly on the question of work. Good jobs that the Unifor is putting forward. The QFL, Quebec Federation of Labour, has been mobilizing for 1.5 years against cuts on unemployment insurance, so on and so forth. So we can expect probably Unifor, the Steelworkers, Quebec Federation of Labour to try and work out some elements of a common position on these questions. So just to give you an idea, those are some of the big themes. But there's also what we call partial movement assembly. For example, people doing Palestine support work want to have a meeting, and there's about 10 different groups from around the country that will be holding activities at the forum. People involved in alternative media want to hold a convergence assembly. There's people involved in indigenous solidarity, want to hold an assembly. There's going to be an assembly on mining, fighting against Canadian mining corporations. There's going to be a convergence assembly, from what I understand, on issues such as fighting war, right? Anti-war, etc., etc. So those are more sectorial assemblies, and that we will channel them as much as possible towards the larger assemblies. So the larger thematic assemblies, we hope to hold them more in the afternoon. The smaller, more sectorial convergence assemblies, will be holding them as much as possible in the morning. At least that's our intention. I guarantee you, by the time the forum comes, everything will be mishmash. But the intention is not to have a mishmash. The last day is crucial. That will be the final convergence assembly of the forum. Forums end usually with sort of a declaration, a statement. We're hoping that this will be a statement of intent to fight against the right, and a statement of intent to unite social movement for the long term, not only for the immediate fight in 2015, but going beyond that in the fight against austerity, neoliberalism, etc. This is our hope. We're beginning to talk about these things, but that's the objective of the forum. The objective of the forum is to come out, really, if not with a complete strategy of fighting against the right, that could be our maximum goal, at least with some common mobilizations, some common campaigns, and some common strategies, as much as possible. So that's my initial presentation. You're welcome to ask all the questions that you'd like to ask.
Yeah, so I think I was asked in part since I've been involved in SAA from the beginning, as well as involved in the social forum process from the beginning as well. So I thought I'd offer just some very brief thoughts, building on what Roger was talking about, specific to SAA and the kind of opportunities for us and the anti-austerity movement at the social forum. So, you know, one very basic thing is the workshops, which Roger mentioned, which any of a number of us could start proposing workshops on a range of the different issues that we're organizing around and working with other groups on, whether it's, you know, work around the minimum wage or the IKEA issue, or, you know, all of the issues that we're working on. But for me, I think one of the really interesting opportunities here is the convergence assemblies. And just to add a little context to what Roger was sharing, I think, you know, one of the things that really hits home for me, the significance of these assemblies, goes back to the World Social Forum in 2003, where one of the key things to come out of that was with the social movements that had converged in the World Social Forum, call for anti-war actions on February 15th, 2003. And so, you know, for folks who were involved in the anti-war movement at that time, or who have looked into it since, that was the largest anti-war mobilization in human history, with 600 cities having protests, 10 or 20 million people, and the original call out for that huge day of action came out of an assembly at the World Social Forum. And so this, you know, we're operating on a slightly different scale here, but it just...
Let's be
or maybe it'll be bigger. It'll be bigger. This will be bigger. But it just sort of highlights the potential of when our movements come together to, you know, this isn't just like a teach-in per se, although, you know, we can certainly organize teach-ins and that kind of thing, but this is an opportunity to have some serious strategic discussions with our friends and allies from coast to coast to coast, to really start getting much more serious about mobilizing beyond the social forum. And so I think that's where it can get really interesting. We've already had some different discussions at some different SAA meetings about, you know, the potential, there's the proposal from the Canadian Peace Alliance to maybe do a joint anti-war, anti-austerity thing, you know, focusing on the fact that, you know, we're not broke, but there's all this money that instead of going to public services is going to war and militarism as one option of the kind of thing that we could be doing, and working as well with other allies like Solidarity Halifax and other groups similar to SAA and other communities as well to build on that kind of network. So we're building alliances with SAA type groups in other cities to move strategies forward that aren't just specific to Ottawa-Gatineau, but can have more intercity coordination. And coming out of that, I think, the kinds of things that we could be talking about is, to have some pre-meetings, to have an assembly at the social forum that SAA sponsors or co-sponsors, and have some meetings with our allies in different cities ahead of that, so that we can go into it and get to the point at the forum where we can map out a plan to have things like, maybe we do a fall mobilization from coast to coast that SAA and others can be part of, and all the way through to a really much more broadly coordinated May Day next year. But that's part of a broader anti-austerity campaign. And that's just an example, but it's the kind of thing where when we're all together in a room with our friends and allies from other cities, that we can come up with a common plan potentially that can really win some of the goals that we've set for ourselves as SAA in partnership with other groups. And I think another basic thing, basic, but Roger mentioned there's going to be the opening march, and I think organizing in the streets is one of the strengths of SAA, and that's the kind of thing where we could put some energy into having a contingent, an anti-austerity contingent, or an anti-capitalist contingent, or however you want to frame it at that mobilization. And I guess one other main thing is the other assemblies that are taking place that Roger mentioned, where there's certainly some overlap and common ground with the work that SAA is doing in terms of the public service unions that are getting together, the Good Jobs Forum, those kinds of things where, even for the parts of it where we're not necessarily organizing something as SAA, although maybe there's possibility to partner with other groups on some of those, but there's at the very least an opportunity to have a presence there and really broaden and deepen our networks with folks outside of Ottawa-Gatineau, as well as folks here who we may not have connected with as deeply as we could yet, to really strengthen the work that we're doing locally and on a pan-Canadian basis. And I guess I'll just end there and pass around, this is the sign-up sheet we started at the last meeting where we struck a social forum committee of SAA to do some of this work and move it forward so that we can have a strategic and meaningful intervention as SAA at the social forum. So I'll just pass that around for folks who haven't had an opportunity to sign it, and there's a couple more flyers about the social forum going around as well, and I'll just leave it at that.